In Hollywood, there are stars, and then there is Tom Cruise, a man who risked life and limb performing stunts that would terrify even seasoned professionals. A man whose name became synonymous with dedication, intensity, and an almost obsessive drive to succeed. But before the bright lights, before the billion-dollar franchises, before the roaring crowds and glamorous red carpets, Tom Cruise was just a boy. A boy trying to find his place in a world that often seemed too large, too harsh, too unkind. His story is not just the story of fame, it is the story of resilience, obsession, and relentless ambition. It begins in Syracuse, New York, on July 3, 1962, when Thomas Cruise Mapother IV entered a world that would challenge him at every turn. His father, Thomas Cruise Mapother III, an electrical engineer with a strict and sometimes volatile temperament, and his mother, Mary Lee Pfeiffer, a dedicated special education teacher, raised him alongside three sisters in a household where love and tension often coexisted uneasily. From the beginning, Tom sensed that the world demanded more from him than it was willing to give, that he had to fight for every ounce of recognition, every moment of attention. School proved to be an early battleground. Dyslexia made reading a challenge that often left him humiliated in front of peers and teachers alike. Labels of laziness or inattention were often hurled at him, but the truth was far more complex. Tom was working harder than anyone could see, struggling against a condition that made what most took for granted feel insurmountable. And yet, even amid these struggles, there was a spark, a restless energy, a determination that refused to be quelled. Life at home was not easy. His father's temper could erupt suddenly, and young Tom learned early the need to endure, adapt, and survive. It was a household of contradictions. Moments of care were quickly followed by anger and tension, teaching lessons that would shape his relentless pursuit of perfection in later years. The divorce of his parents only deepened the challenges, placing the family under new strains. Yet in the midst of chaos, there were moments of clarity and guidance from his mother, who instilled in him resilience, moral grounding, and the courage to pursue his passions. Tom found solace in athletics. Wrestling became a defining outlet for his energy and focus, a place where discipline and physicality gave him a sense of control. Though a knee injury would later force him away from the sport, this period instilled in him a work ethic and tenacity that would define his career. And when physical outlets ran out, he discovered another stage, literally, the theater. A high school teacher encouraged him to audition for a play, and for the first time, Tom experienced the thrill of transformation. Acting allowed him to channel his energy into something constructive, something tangible. Here he was no longer the dyslexic, insecure boy struggling to fit in. He was someone commanding attention, someone powerful. After graduating in 1980, Tom briefly considered entering a seminary, reflecting his Catholic upbringing and a search for purpose. But acting called to him with irresistible force. He moved to New York City with little more than ambition, a few dollars, and an unwavering belief that he could succeed. The city was harsh, filled with uncertainty and unforgiving of mistakes. Yet Tom thrived. He worked odd jobs to survive, from busboy to janitor, while attending endless auditions. Rejection was constant, but each no became fuel, driving him to refine his craft, hone his skills, and build resilience. Early screen appearances came gradually. His first role in Endless Love in 1981 was brief, almost forgettable. Yet it was the first step into a world that would soon claim him completely. A year later, he appeared in Taps, a military academy drama, where his intensity captured attention and his part expanded beyond what was originally planned. Audiences began noticing a young actor with a magnetic presence, someone whose gaze, energy, and commitment suggested that bigger things lay ahead.
By 1983, Tom Cruise's career took a decisive turn. With Risky Business, his performance as Joel Goodson, a teenager navigating desire, ambition, and risk, turned him into a cultural phenomenon. The image of him dancing in a button-down shirt and socks became instantly iconic, a moment that symbolized charm, audacity, and raw talent. It was more than a role, it was a statement. Tom Cruise had arrived, and the world had taken notice. Yet fame alone was never enough for him. Cruise sought to build a career that was both critically respected and commercially dominant. In the mid-1980s, he experimented with diverse roles. Films like All the Right Moves explored the pressures of adolescence, ambition, and small-town life, while Legend plunged him into a world of fantasy, testing both his acting range and his willingness to embrace physically demanding roles. With each film, Cruise was refining his craft, learning the mechanics of Hollywood, and solidifying the image that would define him: ambitious, fearless, and unstoppable. The culmination of this early period arrived in 1986, with Top Gun. Playing Pete Maverick Mitchell, Cruise embodied the archetype of the rebellious, daring, and magnetic action hero. The film was a cultural touchstone, a box office juggernaut, and a defining moment for his career. Cruise's performance was electric, and the character of Maverick became synonymous with charm, daring, and youth-driven energy. Beyond the film itself, Tom's commitment to realism, his insistence on understanding fighter jets and aviation, and his relentless preparation set him apart from his contemporaries. He was no longer just an actor. He was a symbol, a phenomenon, a living embodiment of ambition realized. But even as the world celebrated his success, Tom's life remained a mix of triumph and turbulence. Behind the iconic roles, magazine covers, and red carpet appearances were personal challenges, lessons learned, and ambitions yet unfulfilled. The boy from Syracuse had become a man in Hollywood, but the journey was far from over.
Tom Cruise's childhood was far from idyllic, and it was within this landscape of turbulence and change that the foundations of his relentless drive were formed. Growing up in Syracuse, he was constantly aware of the fragility of stability. The family moved repeatedly, hopping from one neighborhood to another, sometimes across state lines, uprooting friendships and forcing young Tom to continually adapt to new schools, new teachers, and new social hierarchies. Each relocation was a fresh test of resilience, and Tom learned early that survival required flexibility, courage, and a willingness to stand out even when it felt uncomfortable. School was often a battlefield. Dyslexia made reading a daily struggle, turning what should have been a simple task into a frustrating and humiliating ordeal. Letters would blur, sentences would twist, and comprehension became a challenge that left him feeling isolated. While other children seemed to absorb knowledge effortlessly, Tom had to fight for every word, every paragraph, every page. Teachers sometimes misjudged him, labeling him inattentive or careless, but behind the scenes, he was working harder than anyone could see, grappling with a challenge that could have broken his spirit. Instead, it forged it. It taught him determination, grit, and an understanding that obstacles could be overcome with perseverance, a lesson that would carry him through the cutthroat world of Hollywood. Family life added layers of complexity. His father's temper could be unpredictable and intense, creating an atmosphere of tension in which mistakes were punished harshly. Yet within this environment, Tom also observed strength, and he learned the necessity of controlling what he could while enduring what he could not. His mother, Mary Lee, became an anchor in his life, providing guidance, encouragement, and emotional stability. She recognized early on that her son possessed a rare intensity, a drive that could, if properly channeled, lead him to achieve extraordinary things. Her support, combined with the challenges at home, taught Tom resilience, self-reliance, and the ability to confront adversity head-on. Despite these obstacles, Tom sought outlets for his boundless energy.
Sports became a refuge, a way to channel frustration and focus into disciplined activity. Wrestling in particular captured his imagination. It was a sport that demanded both physical skill and mental toughness, and Tom embraced it with relentless determination. The training, the sweat, the discipline, everything about wrestling appealed to his competitive nature and his desire to prove himself. Yet life, as it often does, intervened. A knee injury sidelined him, abruptly ending what could have been a promising athletic pursuit. And in that void, another door opened, one that would alter the trajectory of his life entirely. Acting. The discovery of acting was almost serendipitous. Encouraged by a perceptive high school teacher, Tom auditioned for a school play. On stage, he discovered an arena where he could channel his energy, intensity, and passion. For the first time, he experienced a sense of control and freedom that had been elusive in school and sports. Acting allowed him to step outside himself and inhabit another world, to command attention, to communicate emotion and presence in a way that transcended his struggles with dyslexia. It was transformative. The shy, frustrated boy who had been overlooked in classrooms and playgrounds discovered a realm where he could shine and be recognized for his unique gifts. During his teenage years, his ambitions began to crystallize. He realized that he wanted more than fleeting success. He wanted to excel, to dominate, to create a lasting mark. He became obsessed with improvement, endlessly practicing lines, perfecting gestures, and studying the work of actors he admired. This dedication was unusual for someone his age, but it spoke to a deeper intensity, a profound understanding that talent alone was not enough. Discipline, focus, and an unyielding work ethic were equally essential. Teenage Tom also navigated the complexities of adolescence under the constant pressure of his family dynamics and academic struggles. Friendships were fleeting due to frequent moves, and romantic interests were brief, but each experience contributed to his understanding of human emotion and connection, skills that would later enhance his on-screen performances. Even mundane experiences, from school dances to neighborhood games, were observed keenly, cataloged in his mind, and later transformed into the emotional nuance and charisma that became his hallmark on film. By the time he graduated high school in 1980, Tom's path was clear. The seminary briefly tempted him, reflecting his spiritual curiosity and the search for meaning instilled by his Catholic upbringing, but the allure of acting was irresistible. He recognized that the stage, and eventually the screen, offered a way to transcend his limitations, to channel his energy into a craft that demanded excellence, courage, and imagination. Packing his few belongings, he left Syracuse with little more than determination, stepping into a future filled with uncertainty, ambition, and possibility. New York City was a world apart from the small towns and shifting neighborhoods of his youth. The city was crowded, loud, and unforgiving, and for an 18-year-old with no connections and little money, the challenges were immediate. Tom took whatever jobs he could find, busboy, janitor, odd jobs that paid rent and kept him fed, while he pursued auditions with unwavering focus. Rejection was a daily reality, a test of resilience that would either break him or refine him. For Tom, it was the latter. Each no became motivation, each setback a lesson in perseverance. He absorbed every critique, learned from every failed audition, and refined his craft with a discipline that would soon become legendary. During this formative period, he began appearing in small roles, each one a stepping stone. His first significant exposure came in 1981 with Endless Love, a brief role that introduced him to the mechanics of film acting. Soon after, Taps offered a more substantial opportunity, where his intensity and commitment caused his role to expand beyond initial expectations. Colleagues and directors noticed his dedication, his energy, and his ability to command the screen even in supporting parts. It became evident this was not merely a young actor hoping to succeed. This was a star in the making, a performer whose drive and presence could not be ignored. By 1983, all the pieces converged in a way that would change Tom Cruise's life forever. Risky Business cast him in a leading role that showcased both charm and audacity, a film that perfectly captured the zeitgeist of the early 1980s. His portrayal of Joel Goodson, a young man testing limits and navigating desire, was magnetic. The image of him dancing in a shirt and socks became instantly iconic, a moment of cinema that transcended the film itself and cemented Cruise's status as a cultural phenomenon. Risky Business was not just a career milestone, it was the beginning of a pattern that would define Tom Cruise's life. Daring choices, intense preparation, and a willingness to fully commit to every role he undertook. It marked the transition from promising actor to Hollywood star, setting the stage for the next chapter of his story, a chapter that would bring him global recognition, relentless media scrutiny, and the creation of an iconic persona that would endure for decades.
After establishing himself in Taps, Tom Cruise's career began to pick up momentum, but the road was far from easy. Hollywood in the early 1980s was a fiercely competitive place, brimming with young talent, each actor vying for the spotlight, each hoping to be the next big thing. For Cruise, every audition was both a challenge and an opportunity. He approached each with an intensity rarely seen in actors so young. He studied scripts meticulously, rehearsed endlessly, and experimented with gestures, tones, and expressions, understanding intuitively that authenticity and presence could set him apart from a sea of hopefuls. One of his next early roles came in The Outsiders, a film adaptation of S.E. Hinton's beloved novel. Working alongside a cohort of young actors who would later be known as the Brat Pack, Cruise honed his ability to collaborate while maintaining his distinct presence. Though his role was not the largest, his intensity and emotional range were evident. Directors and co-stars alike took note of his ability to convey complexity and vulnerability even in brief scenes. It was during projects like this that Cruise began learning a critical skill: how to leave an indelible impression on the audience and the industry, no matter the size of the role. Cruise's next major step came with All the Right Moves, a film that explored the pressures of high school sports, ambition, and small-town life. The role demanded more than charm or good looks. It required depth, relatability, and the ability to carry the weight of the narrative. Cruise threw himself into the character, often staying on set long after filming to perfect a scene, studying the motivations and nuances of his role. Critics began to notice that this was an actor who not only possessed natural charisma, but also an almost obsessive dedication to craft. The seeds of the legendary work ethic that would define his career were being sown, and those who worked with him often remarked on the unusual focus and discipline he displayed even at such a young age. Then came Legend, a fantastical film that pushed Cruise into a different kind of challenge. It required physical endurance, imagination, and the ability to inhabit a mythical world convincingly. Though the film itself had mixed reception, Cruise's commitment to his role did not go unnoticed. He approached every scene with the same intensity, embracing physical challenges and emotional complexity alike. It was clear that Cruise was not content to coast on good looks or youthful charm. He sought to challenge himself, to push boundaries, to explore the full spectrum of what he could achieve as an actor. All of these experiences culminated in 1983 with Risky Business, the film that would change the trajectory of his life. Cruise's performance as Joel Goodson was nothing short of magnetic. The character, a young man testing limits, navigating desire, and confronting the unexpected consequences of ambition, resonated deeply with audiences. And then there was that unforgettable scene, Cruise in his shirt and socks, dancing with an abandon that captured the spirit of youth, rebellion, and charm. The scene became a cultural touchstone, quoted, parodied, and celebrated across the world. It was a defining moment that cemented his status as a rising star, but it was only the beginning of a pattern that would characterize his career. Taking risks, embracing challenges, and fully immersing himself in the persona of every role.
The media attention following risky business was intense. Cruise suddenly found himself on magazine covers, in interviews, and the focus of public fascination. He was young, ambitious, and magnetic, a combination that both enthralled fans and drew scrutiny. Even as he basked in newfound fame, he remained disciplined, aware that early success was only a stepping stone. Each subsequent role, each choice, was deliberate, calculated, and aimed at building a long-lasting career rather than fleeting stardom. His rise during this period was not merely about talent. It was about strategy, instinct, and a willingness to commit fully to the process of filmmaking. Cruise began to understand the intricate dynamics of Hollywood, the interplay of star power, public perception, and the cultivation of a professional image. He navigated these waters with a combination of charm, intensity, and a work ethic that set him apart from his peers. By the mid-1980s, Cruise had developed a reputation not only as a gifted actor, but also as a consummate professional. Directors knew they could rely on him for consistent, immersive performances. Co-stars appreciated his energy, his preparation, and the way he could elevate scenes simply by presence. And audiences responded, drawn to the authenticity, charisma, and intensity that seemed to radiate from every role. This foundation of skill, determination, and public attention led inevitably to 1986 and the project that would define a generation, Top Gun. Playing Pete Maverick, Cruise became the embodiment of daring, charm, and youthful rebellion. But reaching this point was not accidental. It was the product of years of relentless work, of a young man pushing against personal limitations, and a career carefully constructed through choices that combined ambition, courage, and instinct. The stage was set for a performance that would not only cement his place in Hollywood history, but also elevate him to global superstardom.
By 1986, Tom Cruise was ready to take the next monumental step in his career, though few could have predicted just how transformative it would be. Top Gun, directed by Tony Scott and produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, was not merely another movie. It was destined to become a cultural phenomenon. The role of Pete Maverick Mitchell was perfectly suited to Cruise's unique combination of charm, intensity, and fearlessness. Yet to fully embody the character, he would need to go beyond traditional acting. Cruise committed himself to a level of preparation that was unusual, even by Hollywood standards, especially for a young actor only a few years out of Syracuse. From the very beginning, Cruise immersed himself in the world of fighter pilots. He spent hours learning about aviation, studying the technical aspects of naval fighter jets, and understanding the culture and psychology of elite pilots. He was not content to mimic a pilot. He wanted to inhabit one fully. Training sessions were grueling. Cruise underwent cockpit simulations, flight briefings, and on-set exercises that tested both his physical endurance and mental acuity. He pushed himself relentlessly, often repeating maneuvers and takes until they felt authentic. This was a young man who had struggled with dyslexia, instability, and repeated obstacles in life, now turning that intensity into mastery of a completely new domain. Filming the aerial sequences posed extraordinary challenges. The actors were not merely performing on a set. They were being filmed in real fighter jets, under extreme physical stress and at high speeds. G-forces pressed against their bodies. Maneuvering was exhausting, and the danger was very real. Cruise threw himself into it with unwavering determination. There were moments when co-stars worried for his safety, but Cruise thrived on the challenge. Every stunt, every flight, every scene carried the authenticity that would make Top Gun feel real to audiences around the world. On set, Cruise formed complex but effective relationships with his co-stars.
Kelly McGillis, who played Charlie, noted his professionalism and intensity, yet also observed a certain youthful intensity that could sometimes make him appear aloof. Val Kilmer, portraying Iceman, became both a foil and a catalyst, pushing Cruise to elevate his performance. These dynamics added depth to the film, creating tension, camaraderie, and chemistry that would resonate on screen. Cruise thrived in this environment, understanding how collaboration could sharpen his own work and elevate the entire production. Beyond the set, the film's soundtrack, imagery, and iconic moments like the volleyball scene, the fighter jet sequences, and the unforgettable line, "I feel the need for speed," became instantly iconic. Cruise's performance was central to this phenomenon. Audiences connected with Maverick not just as a pilot, but as a symbol, youthful, daring, rebellious, and charismatic. Cruise's embodiment of that energy was both natural and meticulously crafted. He was not merely acting, he was living the role. The media attention surrounding Top Gun was unprecedented. Cruise, who had already garnered fame from risky business, found himself catapulted to international stardom. Magazine covers, interviews, and television appearances multiplied exponentially. Fans adored him, critics praised his energy and screen presence, and Hollywood took note of the star-making potential that Cruise carried in every performance. The film itself grossed hundreds of millions worldwide, transforming Cruise into a global icon virtually overnight. But for all the glamour and success, Cruise remained methodical. Fame had not softened his intensity, if anything, it sharpened it. He studied his performances meticulously, absorbed feedback, and remained vigilant about maintaining both his craft and his public image. The boy from Syracuse, who had struggled with dyslexia, who had faced a tumultuous childhood and countless obstacles, now stood at the pinnacle of Hollywood success, yet he remained hungry, focused, and ambitious. Top Gun was not the culmination of his career. It was the opening of a new chapter, a launchpad for a series of iconic roles and unprecedented achievements that would define him for decades. The cultural impact of Top Gun cannot be overstated. Cruise became a symbol of 1980s daring and aspiration, a figure who embodied confidence, courage, and audacious charm. The film influenced fashion, music, and even real-world military recruitment. Yet for Cruise personally, it was also a proving ground. He had demonstrated his ability to tackle physically demanding roles, to dominate a narrative, and to captivate audiences with authenticity and intensity. The performance solidified his reputation as not just a rising actor, but a star capable of carrying a blockbuster, inspiring devotion from fans and commanding respect from industry peers. By the end of the Top Gun era, Tom Cruise was no longer merely a talented young actor. He had become a global phenomenon, a man whose name alone drew audiences into theaters. But with that success came new pressures, expectations, and opportunities that would shape the next phase of his life and career. The stage was set for further triumphs, more audacious performances, and the complexities of life in the Hollywood spotlight. The boy from Syracuse had arrived, yet the journey was far from complete. What lay ahead would test him, challenge him, and ultimately define him not just as a star, but one of the most enduring figures in cinematic history.